poor little girl sees a millionaire's ring and says, "My mom has one just like it." But it was the ring that belonged to his late wife, and the revelation changes everything. Hi. Welcome to another story. If you enjoy it, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on notifications. Jack was a wealthy, respected man, surrounded by everything that suggested stability and success. On the outside, his life seemed intact, but inside, only ruins remained. Since the death of Helen, his wife, he had stopped being who he was. He began to exist out of obligation, like someone just going through the basic motions in an empty body. He breathed, walked, spoke when necessary, but without any real expectation about the world. He loved Helen with a quiet intensity, almost silent, yet unwavering. After she was gone, he never wanted to marry again, never thought about having children, never sought consolation. He made routine a shield, as if the repeated days were a wall against the pain. He held on to her absence tightly, as if it were all he still had. The ring she wore on the day of the accident became a sacred object. He always kept it close, on his finger or in the pocket of some suit, as if it were the last thread that still connected him to love. Over time, he became a solitary figure. People surrounded him, but only people paid to obey. No real affection, no true closeness. He said he was fine that way. But deep down, not even he knew that the pain he carried had stopped being just a memory. It was the only thing he truly felt, the only thing that never left. It was on one of those rare occasions when he had to leave the house that something slipped out of control. A charity event, formal and meaningless, summoned him to a community center to sign sponsorship documents. He didn't want to be there. He spoke to no one beyond what was necessary, didn't smile for the cameras, and feigned no interest in the conversations. He walked the halls like a stranger in his own time, only waiting for the moment to leave, when he felt something touch his leg. A slight tug at the hem of his coat. He stopped. Looking down, he saw a girl in simple clothes, wide-eyed, staring straight at his hand. "That ring there," the girl said. "My mom has one just like it." The sentence came with such certainty it didn't seem like a question. Jack froze. The world around him kept moving. But inside him, everything stopped. He stared at the girl, trying to understand what he'd just heard. He said nothing. She didn't insist either. The mother, a few steps ahead, came back, grabbed the girl's hand with a hurried plea, and the two disappeared into the flow of people. He didn't even get to see the woman's face. Everything happened too fast. But the sentence stayed. It never left his mind for a second. That ring was not ordinary. Helen always said it was a unique piece, custom-made. It had never been replicated, never sold in any store. He knew no other like it existed. So how could that girl recognize that ring? How could she state so confidently that her mother had an identical one? On the way home, inside the car, he remained silent. The driver asked if everything was okay, but he didn't hear. The girl's phrase echoed, as if spoken inside his head, repeatedly. He spent the rest of the day isolated in his office, not answering calls, not opening emails. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. But he couldn't rest. The next day, he called his chief assistant, a discreet and efficient man named Joshua. He sat at the table and spoke without beating around the bush. "I need you to find out who the woman with the girl was yesterday. Community center. They were in the main lobby." The girl tugged my coat. "Any particular reason?" Joshua asked, surprised by the urgency. "She recognized this ring," Jack replied, showing the jewel on his finger. "She said her mother has one just like it." Joshua frowned. "But this ring is one of a kind." "I know, and that's why you're going to find out who they are. Name, address, everything. As fast as possible." Within a few hours, Joshua returned with the information. The woman's name was Anna. She worked as a cleaner for 3 middle-class families and lived with her daughter, Mary, in the back of an old building. A rented room, no luxury, but tidy. No records that stood out. No known relatives. Jack held the file in his hands and silently asked Joshua to get a photograph. He didn't want contact yet, nor to invent excuses to get closer. He just needed to see her face. He needed to confirm with his own eyes what he was beginning to suspect inside. The next day, Joshua came back with the picture. When Jack looked, he was silent. It wasn't Helen. But there was something in the eyes. A way of looking without backing down, of keeping the chin up even when visibly at a disadvantage. It was a gesture he knew well. He had seen it many times in Helen, in their quiet arguments, in decisions she made alone without asking for approval. That woman had something that transcended time. "Does she look like anyone?" Joshua asked, curious. "I don't know yet," Jack replied, "but I need to know everything possible about her. Everything." In the following weeks, the search deepened. Joshua used contacts, old files, forgotten records in public institutions. He came back with an almost empty history. Anna had been registered as a baby, the biological daughter of a woman whose name appeared on an old form, with no father's surname, no other family data. The mother had died young. No clear adoption records. No reference to living relatives. "There's almost nothing," Joshua said. "But there was an inventory. Seems this woman, the one who raised Anna, died and left some simple belongings." Anna declared at the time that the only valuable object she had kept since childhood was a ring with a blue stone. According to her, it was left by her real mother. Jack took the paper. He read that sentence repeatedly. A ring with a blue stone. It was identical to the one Helen wore every day. The same jewel. The same description. "She said she heard that as a child?" Jack asked. "Yes. It's written in the inventory report. That she heard it from the woman who raised her." Jack's blood ran cold. That couldn't be a coincidence. It was impossible. Helen's ring was unique. And now, an unknown woman had an identical one. Since childhood. There was a tiny chance. And yet, that chance weighed like a rock. He then remembered the old country house, where Helen used to keep diaries, letters, sentimental objects, everything she didn't want to leave in plain sight in the main house. It was the place where she wrote in silence, where she spent weekends away from the world. If there was any clue, it would be there. Without thinking twice, he grabbed the keys and drove there. It had been locked for years, with boxes sealed since the day Helen died. He entered the office, pulled back curtains, dusted off, and started digging through everything. Files, drawers, old notebooks. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he had to find something. After hours, in a box hidden in Helen's closet, he found a sealed envelope with her handwriting. The paper was yellowed, but the ink was clear. He carefully opened it and began to read, and as he read, the floor seemed to vanish beneath him. Helen told how she had gotten pregnant as a teenager. The relationship was forbidden, and when she told her parents, she was sent to another town. She was isolated, watched over, surrounded by hired doctors. No one could know. When the baby was born, she was taken from her arms before she could even touch her. They said they arranged a safe adoption, but they never showed documents. They never told the family's name. They only gave vague versions, that the child was taken to another country, or placed in an institution, or that she had died. She wanted to seek help, but had no proof. No birth certificate, no names, nothing. It was as if the child never existed. If she reported it, she'd have to expose herself, her parents, the one who had been with her. And at that time, that was unthinkable. Fear won. The only thing she managed to do was put a ring on the baby's wrist. The the same ring with a blue stone she had carried since childhood. It wasn't a gift. It was a plea for memory. Jack read until the last line. His hands trembled. He couldn't speak. He just stood there, with the letter in his lap, his heart pounding as if he had returned to adolescence. Anna was not only like Helen, she was her daughter. That made Mary a granddaughter. The silence in the house was deafening, and inside it, everything shattered. The past exploded in front of him like a cracked mirror. Helen had a daughter. The daughter had been there all along, alone, invisible. And he, who said he didn't need children, now understood the real weight of that absence. He sat on the couch, looked at the ceiling, and stayed still for hours. The pain, which had been his only companion before, now seemed to have multiplied. It was no longer just longing. It was guilt. It was loss. It was a whole life lived as if none of it existed. But it did. It was there. It had a name, a face, and a daughter who tugged at strangers' coats at charity events. With the past now knocking on the door in a way he never imagined, Jack did what he always did when threatened. He withdrew. It was all he knew how to do. He retreated further into his own silence, but something inside him had changed. This time, the distance wasn't born of cowardice, but uncertainty. There was a new, uncomfortable, persistent desire, the desire to make amends. And he didn't know where to start. Sitting in front of the cold fireplace, with Helen's letter still on the table, Jack wondered for hours if it was right to try any kind of approach. He wanted to see them again. Not as someone seeking answers, but as someone needing to confirm he wasn't hallucinating. Anna was Helen's daughter. Mary, his granddaughter by a twisted fate. But how to get close without seeming intrusive? How to cross a whole lifetime of absence without causing more hurt? The next morning, he called Joshua again. "I want you to find someone trustworthy to mediate some work," Jack said. "What kind of work?" Joshua asked, already opening his notebook. "Old files, here at home. I need someone to organize papers, documents, boxes stored for years." "Want me to call someone from the usual teams?" Joshua suggested. "No. I want Anna's name to come up as a reference, but it has to seem natural. Say we got good references, that we're hiring out of necessity, nothing that sounds forced." Joshua looked cautious. "Are you sure about this, sir?" "I am. But she can't suspect anything. Not a word out of place." 2 days later, Anna received an informal visit. A polite man who introduced himself as an employee of a domestic consulting service explained that an important client needed someone organized for a short-term task. 3 weeks of work, fair pay, simple task. He said her name had been recommended for her discretion and responsibility. "Is it document organization?" Anna asked, suspicious. "Yes, just documents. Nothing unusual. The work is at the employer's own home." She hesitated. She needed the money, but knew that suddenly offered jobs could hide traps. However, there was nothing in the proposal that seemed wrong. The man's tone was calm, straightforward, no pressure. "Can I have a day to think about it?" Anna said. "Of course, but he needs an answer by tomorrow. It's urgent." That night, she talked to Mary while preparing dinner. "They called me for a new job," Anna said. "Seems temporary, but better than nothing." Mary nodded, stirring the rice in the pot. "Is it far?" "No, I can take public transport. They didn't say much. Just that it's a big house with old files. And they recommended me." "Why?" "Good question," Anna answered thoughtfully. "But I think I'll accept." The following Monday, she arrived on time. The mansion was quiet, surrounded by old trees and high walls. A security guard greeted her and accompanied her to the main entrance. The staff member responsible for showing her the space professionally explained she would have an exclusive room, free hours, and freedom to organize the material however she saw fit. In the first days, Anna stayed focused. Boxes, folders, typewritten papers, old records. She worked carefully, without rushing. She was methodical. Jack rarely appeared, but when he did, he was silent, observing from afar. He never invaded her space, but he watched every gesture. From a distance, he saw how she concentrated, how she tucked her hair back before reading a document, how she murmured small comments to herself when she found something out of place. And of Mary, he only had one memory: the direct gaze and the phrase that became a wound. At the end of the first week, Jack commented to Joshua, "She's exactly like Helen, not in the face, in the manner, in the way she breathes between decisions." "And Mary?" Joshua asked. "I haven't seen her again. But it's in her too, the firmness, the calm." The days went by with the same routine. Anna arrived early, did her tasks, ate quietly in the staff kitchen, and went home without extending the time. She never asked questions, never tried to get close. Jack respected that, but didn't stop watching her. As the days passed, something inside him grew, but it wasn't reconciliation. It was fear. "I'm afraid she hates me," Jack said to Joshua one afternoon. "But you didn't do anything against her." "I did nothing for her, and maybe that's worse." At the end of the third week, he learned the deadline was running out, and that if he didn't speak, he might never have another chance. He decided then it was time to show the truth. He prepared an envelope with Helen's letter, the found documents, the forgotten records. He placed everything on the library table. On the last day, he asked an employee to call Anna. Could she come up to the library? There are some old boxes there. Minutes later, Anna entered, holding a clipboard. She stopped when she saw Jack sitting, waiting. "They asked me to come here," she said without ceremony. "Yes," Jack replied. "There are no boxes, but there is something you need to see." She didn't move. "It's not an obligation," he continued, "but it's the truth." He handed her the envelope. Anna said nothing. She sat down, carefully opened it, and began to read. First the letter, then the attachments. No immediate reaction. The silence was thick but not hostile. When she finished, she closed the envelope, looked at him, and said, "I always suspected something was wrong with what I was told, but I didn't expect this." Jack lowered his eyes. "I don't want excuses," Anna said. "Nor explanations. You don't have to. My life was built without answers. I learned to live that way." "I just wanted you to know," Jack said. "Now I do." She stood up. "If you don't mind, I prefer not to come back. Thanks for the work." It was fair, but I think that's enough. Jack nodded. He didn't insist. He knew he had no right. In the following days, he returned to his usual silence. But there was something different in him, a new restlessness. He didn't want to invade her life, but he also couldn't disappear. He began to act the only way he knew, from afar. He sent books to her address, always with a single initial in the dedication. He paid for medical appointments when he knew Mary was sick. He left discreet envelopes with financial help. He never signed anything. He never asked for anything in return. Mary, still a child, began to notice these gestures, the unsigned notes, the books with stories about courage, memory, mothers and daughters, the brief visits to the gate when she was at school. Anna noticed too, but never commented. She knew who it was. She knew where it came from, but she chose not to react. Time passed slowly. Mary grew with attentive eyes, a little quieter, a little more serious. One morning, she found something on a book left at the school gate that made her stop. The ring. The same one she saw on Jack's finger the day of the event. The blue stone gleamed under the weak sun. She understood without anyone explaining. She picked up the ring gently and put it in her pocket. Jack aged silently. He spent his days on the house's porch, looking at the trees he had planted at the start of the marriage. He thought of Helen, of everything that was and what he never had the courage to be. He knew he had told the truth. He didn't run away, but he didn't stay either. He helped the best way he could, but he was never present, and that ate away at him. He wrote a diary, not a book, something short, direct. He told everything he knew, everything he discovered, everything he didn't know how to do. In the end, he wrote only one sentence: "Unlived love doesn't die. It rots from the inside." He left instructions for the notebook to be given to Mary when she graduated, not as an inheritance, but as the truth. On graduation day, Anna handed the package to her daughter without saying a word. Mary read everything in one night. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, running her fingers over the last sentence. Then she opened a wooden box she had carved herself years before and placed the ring inside. She closed it slowly. The next morning, she left early, walked through the still damp streets, entered the old cemetery, and went to Jack's grave. She carried a single flower. She placed it carefully on the tombstone. She said nothing, left no note, but stayed long enough for the silence to make sense. Then, she left, with the calm of someone who understands that not every bond needs to be lived to be real. Some just need to be acknowledged. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.